All right, quick bit of news. This broke in the last day or so. Joyce. So, we already knew that Dillian Whyte had pulled out their respective fight with a hand injury. Their fight's actually only, 3 weeks away this Saturday? Tomorrow, 3 weeks, I think, is when the fight night is. It's Frank Warren's debut with DAZN. It's the first fight in many, many years since the Box Nation days, really, that haven't been on TNT. His last card with TNT is Nick Ball this weekend. Now, immediately after Dillian Whyte pulled out, the kind of speculation was basically what really was going to be who was going to step in. Now, it was good in one sense, in a sense of you had a month's notice. So it wasn't like, Daniel Dubois or what was the guy's name now, actually? Floyd Schofield. Hear the name Schofield, that's the first name that comes to your mind. It wasn't like them pulling out on fight week. We had plenty of time. We had over a month. And over a month for someone like Joe Joyce, if you've just been taken over, is reasonably enough time. It's not going to be optimum, but if you're taking over, it's reasonably enough time. Now, newspapers like The Sun and other ones as well were all reporting at the time that it was going to be Filip Hrgovic stepping in. And for me, I looked at that and thought, oh wow, on the surface, that's actually a better fight. Certainly more competitive. In terms of will the fight be better in terms of action, it'll still be a good fight. But when you look at Dillian Whyte, Joe Joyce, I should really be saying, when you look at Joe Joyce versus Dillian Whyte, you think of two slow, definitely seen better days in Dillian Whyte's case, and probably Joe Joyce as well, heavyweights. And that could probably bring out a good slugfest. It could bring out, a bit of fun for how long the fight goes if it's a 10 or 12 rounder. So I was thinking, okay, if Dillian Whyte's no longer fighting and now it's Filip Hrgovic, that's a tougher fight for Joe Joyce. It probably will still be entertaining, maybe not to the extent that Dillian Whyte, Joe Joyce could have been, but I think it still is going to be an entertaining fight nonetheless. They have obviously fought in the WSB. Joe Joyce won that fight. That was a long time ago. A much fresher Joe Joyce who hadn't taken the type of headshots, serious amounts of punishment he's taken. Filip Hrgovic, it's weird to see where his head's going to be at, because going into even like Filip Hrgovic when he turned pro and was on the scene first, he was a lot lighter than he is now, and he just looked better. I know he wasn't fighting the cream of the crop. He was fighting fairly obscure fighters, Riddell Brokers and people like that, but he looked good. There looked something about him. And then he started taking easier fight after easier fight. His weight steadily increased, and then you just were like, right, well, what's going on now? He fights Zhilei Zhang. He wins the fight. A lot of people felt that he shouldn't have got the nod that night. He didn't look good. He looked laboured. Now, I know he was dealing with some personal issues going into that fight. His father recently just passed away. He was very close to, so some fighters can block it out, some can't. And obviously he was very close with his dad. You got the feeling, okay, that will definitely have affected him in this fight. He came away with the win. That's all well and good. A year later, it felt like a year anyway, he goes in there against MC McKeon, who's not even close to the level of a Zhilei Zhang. And yeah, he was winning the fight comfortably. He's still looking very laboured in there. Very just disinterested, so to speak. And eventually closed the show against MC McKeon in the 12th round. And that win looks a lot worse now, considering the nature of the win. When you look at Moses Atauma, who at the time was only 19 years old, blasted MC McKeon out and around, had no problem, just dismantled him. And then he fights Mark Demori, and that to me was just inexcusable. Mark Demori of all people, you just can't excuse that. And that was announced. It wasn't like a short notice job. That was announced. I don't know if Demori was at the press conference, but I know it was announced he'd be fighting Demori long before. So that's inexcusable as far as I'm concerned. So it really showed where Hrgovic was at. He fights Daniel Dubois, starts very well, but just throws way too many punches, loses the fight on cuts, never touches down though, so we'll have some solace in that. So now the question is, where's his head at? Has that loss given him the proverbial kick up the backside to really get his what into gear? He's been posting footage of himself training. He seems to, certainly from what I'm seeing and certainly some of his posts, he seems to be, minding the game. We'll only be able to tell on fight night. What's interesting as well is that apparently Warren has now signed Hrgovic to a deal with Queensberry. Now, for me, I'm kind of looking at that thinking, I think his contract with Matchroom, I think it might have ended around the Demori fight. Don't quote me on that, but I think, well, obviously it wouldn't have, because he represented Matchroom for Matchroom versus Queensberry. But I think he was kind of 1 foot out the door at Matchroom even at that point. Now, Frank Warren signing Filip Hrgovic. This may be Frank Warren looking at Filip Hrgovic and thinking, you know what? Joe Joyce probably would have beat Dylan White. I don't know, does he beat Filip Hrgovic? And because you're not with a promoter, you want this fight, you have to sign with me. Because you're not going to beat my guy and then sail off into the sunset. If you beat my guy, you're now my guy. That's what I think, Frank. So I reckon Frank Warren is looking at this fight thinking Hrgovic is going to beat Joe Joyce, so I need Filip Hrgovic now. Because his stable of heavyweights is just growing by the day. It's crazy, really. I mean, he's leaving pretty much all other promoters in the dust. I mean, Golden Boy, have they got any heavyweights? PBC? They don't have Wilder anymore, I don't know. Nor do I know about Ruiz. Bob Arum has Richard Torres. He's F.A. Jagba. Yeah, I'm struggling with the rest. Who else does he have? Frank Warren has the lot, really. I mean, Eddie Hearn has Fisher. Johnny Fisher's going life and death with Dave Allen. Whatever you think of Fraser Clark didn't even need to get out of second gear to deal with Dave Allen. So Frank Warren has a big stable of heavyweights and it's only growing. So might be the place for him. In terms of the fight itself, I like it. I think it's going to be an interesting fight while it lasts. I would have made Joe Joyce resounding favourite to beat Dylan White. I don't make him favourite to beat Filip Hrgovic. If Hrgovic turns up, that I think he can. He is still young enough. Joe Joyce is 40 this year. He's taken some serious punishment in and outside the ring. And yeah, listen, I haven't noticed, this is just me from the outside looking at it, I haven't noticed Joe Joyce any different in interviews. A lot of people have been saying that they feel like he's sounding a little bit more slurred, a little bit more punchy, stuff like that. For me personally, I haven't seen it, but you know, maybe I'm not looking at it hard enough. I've met Joe Joyce in person, and he is kind of, I'm not going to say he's just like that. He's just very, you know, yeah, what, huh? He's just always been like that. So for me, it's kind of like, well, that's just, I've seen him like that before, and you know, younger and fresher. So I'm not necessarily reading too much into it now, but let's wait and see in a year or so. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed it, people. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. And until next time, which will be later, after I have to watch that Piers Morgan show tonight with Ben and Eubank. Peace.